Crystal, it's been awesome having you all morning, as always. It's also equally awesome to have KT McFarland, Fox News national security analyst, here when we're lucky once a week. Hello, KT.
Good morning.
Follow KT, by the way, on Twitter, KT McFarland. That's with a D at the end. I want to start with Israel. KT, so much to talk to you about, but let's start with Israel. And most specifically, you know, after the 2 weeks that we've seen here where Israel's obviously defending themselves and doing what they can to neutralize Hamas, an organization whose charter calls for the destruction of Israel, not to mention the death of Jews. Jimmy Carter, former U.S. president, is pushing for the United States to recognize Hamas. I recognize Hamas. I recognize them as terrorists. What is Jimmy Carter thinking?
Well, he's going in absolutely the wrong direction. What the United States should do at this point, couldn't do it before, could do it now, is understand that the amazing thing that happened in the Gaza fighting was not the fighting, not that Israel won, not that Hamas was using its children as human shields, but that the moderate Sunni Arab states were quiet. They didn't condemn Israel. In every other one of these conflicts, which happens every couple of years, all the Arab world condemns Israel. This time they didn't. Now, what does that mean? That means that countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Jordan and United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, they're looking at Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and what they see in Syria and Iraq with the rise of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and radical jihad, and they say, yikes, we could be next.
Right.
So therefore, there's an opportunity now for the first time for the United States is the only country that could do it, to pull together a coalition of moderate Sunni states, the United States, Israel, and stand up to the spread of radical jihad. And that would include the Muslim Brotherhood and all of that witch's brew of radicalism.
This is a great insight. I hadn't actually noticed that none of the other nations had condemned Israel here. But what does that tell you? Just to take it back to Jimmy Carter, KT McFarland, Jimmy Carter is softer on Hamas than Arab nations are at this moment.
Yeah. That really tells you something, doesn't it?
Wow.
Well, KT, what do you think? Why has there always been this reluctance? And of late, you know, there's been a lot of reporting. The mainstream media refuses to call out Hamas for what it is, a terrorist organization, and it seems to be bleeding over into the Obama White House, the Obama administration. Why are we so quick to call out terrorists, as you point out, in Iraq and all these other Muslim countries, but we are loath to call out Hamas?
You know, I can't figure it out, and I'm never going to speak for the Obama administration. But they seem to have thought, from people who I trust and believe, that this is not a, sinister plot by the Obama administration to destroy Israel, but that the Obama administration really thought that if they could partner with the Muslim Brotherhood, that somehow they would use that as the bulwark against more radical Islamic groups. I think that they're wrong. I think it's dancing with the devil and hoping that the devil's not going to do you in at the end of the dance. But I think that's the only possible explanation I can come up with, other than a sinister one.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the way, except for the Wall Street Journal, of course, and maybe the Washington Times and some other conservative-leaning publications, the New York Times, the Washington Post, it seems almost anti-Semitic, their reporting. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, KT. Hamas threw the first rockets, right? They started this.
Crystal, here's how it happens. And it's a predictable routine. Hamas does some provoking incident. This time it was kidnapping 3 young kids and killing them. Israel responds. Hamas escalates by lobbing rockets into Israel. Israel retaliates by destroying the rocket launchers and, in this case, the tunnels. It happens every couple of years. Every couple of years it gets more lethal because the weapons get more lethal. Israel has developed an Iron Dome self-defense system. Hamas has developed tunnels. But it always ends up the same way. Israel wins, Hamas loses. So why does Hamas keep doing it? Because they think they're going to do exactly what you've just said. They think they're going to stoke anti-Semitism around the world. They think they're going to stoke the world's sympathy. They use their own children as human shields. I mean, they have those tunnels. They're not putting the children in the tunnels to protect the children from attacks. They're putting the children on top of the tunnels.
Yeah. Right.
They're putting the children in front of the missiles, and they're doing it deliberately. In fact, a training manual that was found just this week in one of the tunnels talks about using human shields. Talks about using civilians
Yeah.
as human shields.
I saw that. KT McFarland's our guest. I got to ask you, D.C. has the traffic's been snarled, and a lot of normal operations in this town have been snarled because of this Africa summit that's going on. On day one, we heard Secretary of State talking about John Kerry talking about global warming as such a major threat. Yesterday, the president was emphasizing investment by private industry into the continent of Africa, and I get that, and I got nothing against it necessarily. Hardly any conversation about radical Islam, the growing threat in that continent, and how it is undermining these unstable governments. Why are they ignoring the Islamic threat there in Africa during this very critical moment during this Africa summit?
Hey, look, if you got bin Laden...
yeah, right. It's over.
It's over. You're done. You're on global warming. Who's against global warming? Who's in favor of global warming? That's an easy one, right? We're against global warming. Well, everybody's against global warming. The point is that you just started this thing by talking about Jimmy Carter and his cluelessness.
Right.
Only guy who's ever going to come down and win those opinion polls is the worst president.
Yeah.
Who's going to beat Jimmy Carter is going to be Barack Obama in about 5 years.
But
All variations on a theme.
Yeah, but isn't it ironic that we have the first black president hosting an African nation summit? It's supposed to be part of his legacy because he's black, but he doesn't want to tackle the biggest threat, I would argue, to the United States of America in the last decade, which is terrorism, right? It's just so funny. And the media,
the biggest threat to America
once and again,
is that we've stopped believing in ourselves. That you have opinion polls that say 70% of the people don't trust Washington, don't believe that we're going in the right direction. The biggest threat is us, but the biggest external threat is that we've decided to lead from behind, which means you don't have a seat at the table.
KT McFarland, we got to leave it there, though, but I do ask everyone, I point you to FoxNews.com, her latest op-ed yesterday about this once-in-a-lifetime chance in the Middle East in condemning Hamas and isolating them. It's great stuff. Thank you, KT.